Leonard Leo Barnes was a man who felt like he was in complete control of his life. He is 42 and could be called a successful man. He was tall, stately, with thick brown hair and a confident posture. His light blue eyes always expressed concentration, as if he was constantly assessing the situation and calculating in advance the possible consequences of his actions. His movements were measured and precise, his voice was calm but firm, and his smile was a rare occurrence. Leo has never been a man of emotions. He trusted logic, facts, and a well-structured plan. His job was managing financial risk at one of the largest investment banks in New York. This meant long hours in the office, endless negotiations, and control of millions of dollars. He liked the feeling of power that his profession gave. He could predict the behavior of markets, find weaknesses in competitors' strategies, and always win where others lost. He did not believe in accidents and rarely made mistakes. His colleagues sometimes joked that Leo was more of a machine than a person. His decisions were so accurate and verified. But it wasn't just his work that lined up according to his schedule. He was used to a clear organization of everything in his life. Morning runs through Central Park at exactly 6 o'clock, coffee with 2 spoons of sugar and no milk at 6:45, reports on his desk by 8 o'clock. His wardrobe consisted of perfectly pressed suits, his watch was always set to the second, and his car, a dark blue BMW, was refueled exactly once a week on the same day. He didn't like surprises or unexpected changes. He found peace in order and stability. Despite his toughness and punctuality, Leo was not soulless. He valued people who shared his values of loyalty, honesty, and discipline. He believed that a man should be a reliable support, and a word should be stronger than a signed contract. In business, they respected him, but at the same time, they were afraid of him. Colleagues knew, if Leo Barnes took on something, he would not stop until he achieved results. He was respected, but few really knew him. He was reserved in his friendships and did not allow people to get too close to him. He had hobbies, but even they were subject to strict logic. He collected rare chess pieces and enjoyed solving complex puzzles. He loved long walks around the evening city. It was a time for reflection, a moment when he could put everything in order. Another passion of his was books, mainly biographies of great people and scientific works. He admired those who built their own destinies with their own hands and drew inspiration from them. But did he have a personal life? It seemed so. But for now, this will remain behind the scenes. He rarely discussed personal matters, even with his closest friends, and his inner world remained a mystery to those around him. On this day, as usual, his day began with a run. New York had not yet woken up, the air was fresh, and thoughts were clear. He ran along a familiar route, feeling the tension drain away with every step. The first taxi signals were heard in the distance, 2 couriers were arguing somewhere at an intersection, and the first cappuccinos were already being prepared in the coffee shop on the corner. The city was waking up, and Leo felt like he was in control of every moment of his life. He thought he knew what his future would look like. He planned everything. He just didn't know that very soon his life would turn upside down. Leonard Barnes was born in a small town in Massachusetts into a family where discipline and order were not just the norm, but an unshakable rule. His father, George Barnes, was a military engineer, a man of strong principles and a clear value system. He always repeated to his son, "Order in the head means order in life." This phrase became a kind of credo for Leo. His mother, Margaret Barnes, was a literature professor at a local college. She was distinguished by her gentleness, but at the same time she was deeply demanding of her children. She instilled in Leonard a love of books, especially classical literature, and taught him that words contain the power that can change reality. As a child, Leo was a quiet but very observant boy. He rarely participated in the noisy games of his peers, preferring to spend his time reading books, puzzles, or chess with his father. His ability to think ahead admired those around him, and at an early age, it became clear that he had an analytical mind. Despite the strictness of his upbringing, Leo felt the love of his parents. His father taught him discipline and responsibility, and his mother taught him the subtleties of the human soul. but there was no place for sentimentality in their home. The words, "I love you," were not spoken out loud. Here affection was expressed through actions, not emotions. At school, he was a diligent student who did not strive for popularity, but gained respect for his erudition and discipline. He knew what he wanted, and already as a teenager, he dreamed of a career related to precision and calculation. Money and success were not an end in themselves for him, rather, he saw them as a tool to control his own destiny. His youth was spent in constant pursuit of perfection. Every step, every decision was carefully thought out. He did not allow himself weaknesses, did not look for easy ways. He will carry this way of thinking throughout his life. Leonard Barnes's youth was marked by perseverance and determination. In high school, he already knew that he wanted to succeed in life, and therefore made every effort to build a strong foundation for the future. He was distinguished among his peers not only by his high intelligence, but also by his incredible discipline. Not being the most sociable person, he rarely participated in noisy parties and spent more time studying textbooks or chess games. However, even such a purposeful person as Leo could not avoid the first feeling. Her name was Elizabeth Harper. She was his complete opposite, cheerful, spontaneous, with an infectious laugh and an easygoing attitude towards life. They met at the university when Leo was just starting to get used to his new environment. Elizabeth literally burst into his life and brought with her the bright emotions that he so lacked. For Leo, it was a new sensation. For the first time, he allowed himself to step away from a strict routine, spend sleepless nights talking, walk without a specific goal, and simply enjoy the moment. Elizabeth opened up a world of spontaneity for him, and he gradually began to believe that perhaps life should not be structured like a chess game. But this romance ended as quickly as it began. One day, he found out that Elizabeth was cheating on him with another student. At that moment, he felt not so much the pain of betrayal as surprise. He could not understand why a person who spoke about love was capable of such a lie. He didn't make a scene, didn't start to sort things out, he just broke all ties. This incident only strengthened his conviction that feelings interfere with rationality, and trusting someone means dooming yourself to weakness. After this, Leo made a conclusion that influenced his future life. He would never again allow his feelings to control him. Now his main principles are calculation, control, and distrust of those who play with emotions too easily. Leonard Barnes didn't believe in fate. He believed that life is a series of decisions based on logic, not on chance. But even he had to admit that his meeting with Rachel seemed like something predestined. It happened in one of the New York book cafes. Leo was sitting by the window, reading an economics magazine, when he heard an argument at the counter. A female voice, full of irritation and sarcasm, was passionately arguing something with the barista. "Sorry, but a decaf latte with almond milk cannot be called real coffee. It's more of a parody." The girl was indignant. The barista shrugged. "But this is exactly the order that was made." Leo chuckled slightly as he watched the scene. The girl, clearly dissatisfied, looked around the hall and met his eyes. She raised an eyebrow, as if asking, "Do you also think this is absurd?" "Logic says coffee should contain caffeine." He couldn't resist. She smiled, walked over to his table, and sat down opposite him, holding the notorious drink in her hands. "You look like a person who likes order. Let me guess, do you have an exact schedule for the day on your watch?" she asked, taking a sip of her latte. Leo raised an eyebrow. "And you decided this because I was reading a financial magazine or on a tie?" She laughed. "It catches your eye. I'm Rachel." This is how their first conversation began. They talked about books, about the city, about how ridiculous some people's habits are. For the first time in a long time, Leo felt like he could afford not to be perfect, but to simply enjoy the conversation. But deep down, he was still tormented by doubts. Could he trust his feelings again? Rachel looked at him with a slight mockery and continued the conversation. "You're clearly used to having everything under control. Isn't it boring to live within such limits?" Leo shrugged. "Not boring, just convenient. If you know what awaits you, mistakes can be avoided. Don't you think that sometimes mistakes make our lives interesting?" She smiled. He thought about it. Is she right? Maybe his strict order is really depriving him of something important. The conversation continued, and Leo found himself thinking that, for the first time in a long time, he was enjoying communication and not analyzing every word. Rachel talked about traveling and how important it is to be able to let go and just live. Her philosophy was the complete opposite of his own, and perhaps that was what attracted him to her. "Well, Mr. Order," she said, finishing her coffee, "do you want to take a risk and try something spontaneous? For example," he asked cautiously. "Now let's leave the cafe and just go wherever our eyes lead. No plan, no goal. Just walk." Leo grinned, but a strange curiosity flared within him. It wasn't like him, but for some reason he nodded. As she stood up to leave, Rachel glanced at him briefly and, as if knowing his thoughts, said, "Sometimes you just have to take a chance, Leonard, even if you are used to calculating everything." He stood up and, without realizing it, took the first step towards changes that would change his life forever. After that first meeting in a book cafe, Leo's life began to change. He, accustomed to strict order and schedule, suddenly discovered that he was drawn to this spontaneous, easy-to-communicate woman. Rachel brought chaos into his life, but in a strange way, the chaos didn't annoy him. In fact, he found it refreshing. They started dating. Leo was never in a hurry to make decisions, but Rachel seemed to break down his barriers with just her presence. She could call him during the working day and offer to run away for lunch to a small cafe on the outskirts of the city. She fascinated him with walks along the unfamiliar streets of New York, forced him to try new dishes, and watch films that he would not have even looked at. "You live as if every minute should be under control," she said one day when they were sitting on the roof of her house, watching the sunset. "But haven't you ever wanted to just forget about the watch?" Leo thought about it. For a long time, he lived this way, calculating, planning, avoiding surprises. But Rachel was changing him. He found himself allowing himself to be more spontaneous, and it was nice. They started traveling together. At first, these were short trips to Vermont, to the coast, to small towns full of comfort and street musicians. Then Paris, Barcelona, Key West. She loved romance, small hotels, and leisurely breakfasts in street cafes. He preferred comfort, clarity, and pre-planned routes. But gradually, he learned to enjoy her lifestyle. Rachel was an artist, and her view of the world was full of color and emotion. She painted people, nature, even the streets where they walked. One day, she gave him a city landscape that reminded him of that evening when they first walked together in the rain. "Why exactly at this moment?" he asked, looking at the picture. She shrugged and smiled. "Because then I realized that you were changing, and I wanted to remember this." But most of all, Leo remembered not the pictures, not the travel, but their nights. Their passion was uncontrollable, like a flame that could not go out. He never knew he could desire someone so much. When she touched him, he forgot about everything. His strict self-control crumbled under her soft touches and hot kisses. Their first night was a whirlwind of emotions, slow, sensual, intense, filled with hunger for each other. Rachel was brave, open, and passionate. She loved to dominate, but she also gave in, giving him a sense of power. They could make love on the floor of her apartment, among canvases and brushes, in a hotel room overlooking the ocean or under the stars, covered with a blanket. These were the moments when Leo completely lost his head, forgetting about his habit of controlling everything. Sex with her wasn't just a physical act. It was a connection he couldn't explain. He felt that in her hands he became different, not ideal, not calculated, but real. Every time she whispered his name, her hot breath touched his skin, he knew he was lost. She became an addiction for him, a sweet and inevitable temptation that he did not want to get rid of. Leo never thought he would take such a step, but with Rachel it was different. She changed his view on relationships, on love, on life itself. He knew he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. The only question was how exactly to make an offer. Leo spent a long time thinking through the details. He didn't want to do this in public, among hundreds of strangers. Rachel, although more spontaneous than he, still appreciated the sincerity and depth of the moment. In the end, he chose a place that had special meaning, the roof of her house, where they once met the sunset and talked about life. Everything was perfect that evening. Wine, her favorite candles, a soft blanket. They sat next to each other, and Leo felt excitement slowly growing in his chest. Finally, he pulled out a small box, opened it, and looked at Rachel. "You changed my life," he said, trying to keep his voice from shaking. "You taught me to enjoy the moment, to see beauty where before I saw only order. And I want you to be by my side always. Marry me." She froze, her eyes widened, and then a smile full of emotion appeared on her face. "Yes, Leo, yes." She rushed to him, wrapped her arms around him, and kissed him, so that he realized that this was the right choice in his life. That night their passion flared up with renewed vigor. Leo felt how her breath became hotter, how her lips slid over his skin, leaving a trail of tenderness and desire. Rachel looked at him with such fire in her eyes that it took his breath away. They dissolved in each other, forgetting about everything, merging into a single whole. "I've never been so happy," she whispered when their bodies finally calmed down. "And you will never be lonely," he answered, running his hand along her back. "Now you are a part of me, and I will not let you go." She smiled, kissing his neck tenderly. Before the wedding, Leo decided to talk to his mother. He knew that she always cared about him, and her opinion mattered to him. "Mom, I love her. I am ready to carry her in my arms and do everything for her. She made me happy," he said, holding her hands. Margaret Barnes looked at her son carefully and then sighed heavily. "Leonard, I see that you are happy, and I want this happiness to last forever. But I know people, I know that you are trusting when you love. I'm afraid that she will break your heart." "Mom, why do you say that? You don't even know her well yet." "I may not know, but I know you. You are the one who gives your all, and such people suffer the most when they are betrayed." Leo smiled and shook his head. "I don't think about betrayal, Mom. I think about how to make her happy, and if I succeed, then isn't that the meaning of life?" She looked at him with sadness and warmth at the same time. "I hope you're right, my boy." The next important step was meeting her parents. Leo was worried, although he tried not to show it. Rachel came from a family of creative people. Her father was a musician, and her mother was a famous gallery owner. It was a completely different world compared to his strict upbringing. The first dinner was unusual. Rachel's father greeted him in an old sweater, with a cup of coffee and a piercing gaze. "So, are you the same Leonard she's been buzzing our ears about?" he asked with a smile. "I hope only good things," Leo replied, shaking his hand. "We'll see," the father grinned and waved his hand, inviting him to the table. Rachel's mother turned out to be friendlier, but still with a slight note of distrust. She asked him about his plans, about life, about how he felt about art. At the end of the evening, he realized that despite their initial wariness, they accepted him. Perhaps not immediately, but they accepted it. Preparing for the wedding was a real challenge. Rachel wanted something light, natural, an open-air ceremony without too much formality. Leo, accustomed to order and clarity, strove to ensure that everything was organized perfectly. They argued about the place, about the menu, about the music, but in the end they found a compromise. The wedding day was fabulous. Light breeze, sunset sky, friends and family around. When Leo saw Rachel in a white dress, he felt his heart clench. She was beautiful. At that moment, he realized that nothing in the world matters except her. "I'm your wife now, Mr. Barnes," she whispered to him when they were alone. "And you are mine forever," he answered, kissing her. Little did he know how much his faith in this would be tested. Leo never thought love could be so all-consuming. He was sure that feelings dull over time, that passion turns into a habit, but with Rachel everything was different. She became for him the air necessary for life, the meaning of every day. He woke up before her, just to admire her face, to catch the slight smile playing on her lips in her sleep. He felt like the happiest man in the world, knowing that she was nearby. Their life was filled with joy and ease. Rachel always brought something new into their everyday life. Either she organized sudden picnics in the park, or she suggested going away for the weekend without a plan, just randomly. Leo, who previously lived according to a clear schedule, now easily succumbed to her spontaneity. He learned to enjoy the moment, let go of control, and just be happy. "You have no idea how much I love you," he told her, pulling her towards him after a long day of work. "Oh, I can imagine," she whispered back, throwing her arms around his neck. "And I love you no less." Leo never regretted his choice. He did everything to make her feel most desirable, most loved. He spoiled her with gifts, but the main gift was his attention. He could buy her expensive jewelry, but Rachel valued their nightly walks around the city more, when they would just hold hands and talk about everything. She said that her happiness lay in simple things, and he tried to surround her with them. Every evening he cooked dinner for her, despite her protests that it was not fair, because the one who could do the cooking was the one who could cook worse. They laughed, played spontaneous cooking competitions, and ended up in the same situation every time, kissing in the middle of the kitchen, forgetting about food. But most of all, Leo loved the moments when they were alone. In these moments, the whole world disappeared, only they remained. Rachel was his passion, his weakness, his addiction. He couldn't get enough of her, her laughter, her voice, her touch. "I will never stop wanting you," he whispered, running his fingers over her bare skin. "And I you," she answered, clinging to him, lips hot with desire. Their love was strong, alive, real. Leo believed that it would always be like this. After all, they had everything: passion, trust, happiness. They were not just spouses, they were one. But he did not know that nothing in this world lasts forever. Rachel sat in a cozy cafe by the window, impatiently stirring her cappuccino with a spoon. Opposite her, her best friend, Emma, sat with her arms crossed over her chest. They had been friends since college, shared their deepest secrets, supported each other in everything. And now, when Rachel had been married for several years, she so wanted to share her happiness. "You have no idea, Em," Rachel began with a smile. "Sometimes it seems to me that this is just a fairy tale. Leo is perfect. He cares about me, listens, understands. He is always there." Emma raised an eyebrow and grinned. "Are there such men? Are you sure he's not some secret agent with a program to charm wives?" Rachel laughed and shook her head. "No, he's just like that. He's real. I have never felt so calm and confident in a relationship. He makes breakfast before work, sends me messages throughout the day just to say he misses me. Every evening he hugs me as if he is afraid to let me go." Emma took a sip of coffee and smiled. "Honestly, you are one of the few who are truly lucky. I see how some of our friends complain about their husbands, how they get tired of everyday life and lose interest in each other. What about you? You're glowing, Ratch. Leo made you like this." Rachel nodded dreamily. "Yes, and you know, sometimes it seems to me that I don't deserve such happiness. After all, life is never that perfect, right?" Emma chuckled and tapped her finger on the edge of her cup. "Well, if you lived in a movie, this would be the moment when an unexpected turn would appear in your life. But you know that this is nonsense. Enjoy. While there is happiness, don't look for a catch in it." Rachel chuckled, but something about her friend's words made her think for a moment. She was really happy, but suddenly, she pushed the thought away and turned the conversation to something else. She didn't yet know how right Emma would be. Leo didn't notice the changes right away. At first, it was little things. Rachel began to leave more often on errands, stay late at meetings, skip their traditional dinners. He chalked it up to work because she was always active and ambitious. But something in her behavior began to seem strange. She looked into his eyes less and less, her kisses became shorter, and her laughter became quieter. One evening, he came home earlier than usual. The apartment was dark, with only the phone screen illuminating Rachel's face. She sat on the sofa, completely immersed in conversation. Leo froze in the doorway. "No, I can't today." "Yes, I miss you too." Her voice was warm, almost playful. She noticed his gaze and abruptly ended the conversation. "Leo, are you home already? You're early." "Yes, work ended early." "Who were you talking to?" he asked with a smile, but inside he felt an unpleasant pang. "With Emma. We were going to have coffee, but I canceled. Let's spend the evening together." She came up and kissed him tenderly, as if trying to erase his suspicions. Leo smiled and nodded, but a strange feeling crept inside him. He wasn't used to doubt. He wasn't used to suspecting Rachel, but something inside him was wary. As the weeks passed, the alarm bells grew louder. She began to stay late at work and come late, explaining this with projects and meetings with clients. He believed because he wanted to believe. One evening, he was preparing dinner and waiting for her to come home. She promised to be there by 8. The clock hands had passed 10, but she was still not there. Leo dialed her number. "Oh, Leo, I'm sorry. We were stuck with colleagues discussing a new project. I didn't notice how time passed. I'll be there soon." Her voice was cheerful, but for some reason unnatural. When she returned, he looked at her longer than usual. She smelled like someone else's perfume, and for the first time in a long time, he did not ask unnecessary questions. Leo didn't like to leave the city for no reason, but this time he just needed to be in silence. His thoughts were confused, his heart sank anxiously, and the only place where he felt truly protected was his parents' home. He got into the car and hit the road. The road to his home, winding among the green hills, always calmed him. As a child, he dreamed of leaving for the big city as soon as possible, but now it seemed to him that this house was the only place where he could breathe freely. When Leo arrived, his mother was already waiting for him on the porch. Margaret Barnes was a woman with a keen eye, always knowing when her son needed support. She carefully peered into his face, trying to understand what was bothering him. "Leo, you didn't even warn me." "Everything is fine?" she asked, hugging him. He lingered in her arms a little longer than usual, inhaling the familiar scent of homeliness. "Yes, I just wanted to be at home," he answered quietly and walked into the living room. Margaret followed him, pouring tea and sitting down opposite him. Her eyes never left her son. "Leo, you look tired. Is something bothering you?" she asked, watching him carefully. He sighed and looked down at the cup. His fingers squeezed it as if he was afraid of losing something important. "Mom, I don't know. Everything seems so right, but I feel like something is wrong. It's like I'm losing control of what's important to me. It's a strange feeling." She took a sip of tea, thoughtful. "This is about Rachel, right?" she asked softly. Leo looked up at her. He didn't tell her anything, but his mother always knew how to see what was hidden deeper than words. "She has changed. I can't say exactly what, but I feel it," he admitted, shaking his head. "She stays late at work more often and has become more absent-minded. Sometimes it seems to me that when she looks at me, her thoughts are somewhere far away." Margaret listened attentively, her forehead wrinkles deepening. She put her hand on his palm. "You have always been a person who sees more than he says. If you feel something, then these are not empty guesses. Trust yourself, son, but don't rush to conclusions. Sometimes the fear of loss makes us see ghosts where there are none." Leo nervously ran his hand through his hair. "I'm just afraid of making mistakes," he whispered. "If I'm wrong, I'll ruin everything good we have." "And if I'm right?" Margaret covered his hand with hers, making it clear that he was not alone in his doubts. "It's okay to make mistakes. The main thing is not to ignore your feelings. But don't rush to conclusions. Listen to your heart, but don't forget about your mind. And remember that you are not alone, Leo. I'm always there." Leo closed his eyes and squeezed her hand. He really needed to hear those words. The bar was full of laughter, music, and the dull hum of voices. Friday evening brought together a variety of people, from office workers wanting to relax after a hard week to students noisily celebrating the start of the weekend. Rachel and her best friend Emma sat at one of the cozy corner tables, sipping cocktails and chatting animatedly. "Well, tell me, how are you doing?" Emma raised her eyebrow coquettishly, tilting her head to the side. Rachel smiled and took a sip from her glass. "Everything is fine. Leo, as always, is caring, attentive. Sometimes even too much." He controls everything. Everything must be according to plan. Don't you like it? Emma looked at her with interest. Rachel thought as she twirled her glass in her hands. Sometimes you want something else. More spontaneity, excitement. It was at this moment that a tall, confident man approached their table with a slight smile on his lips. He was wearing a stylish dark shirt, unbuttoned at the top buttons, and jeans. His brown eyes sparkled mischievously, and the shadow of 3-day stubble gave his face a careless masculinity. "I hope I won't interfere," he asked, speaking more to Rachel than to her friend. Emma immediately tensed, her smile becoming forced. She examined the man carefully, as if trying to immediately determine his intentions. "Well, actually," Rachel began, but the stranger interrupted her with a soft but confident voice. "I just couldn't pass by. I have never met such a beautiful woman with such a thoughtful look." Rachel felt her heart skip a beat. There was something bewitching in his voice, in his eyes, a challenge that she had not felt for a long time. "Is this how you always meet women?" she asked with a slight grin. "Only with those who are really attractive," he answered, leaning a little closer. "My name is Daniel." She smiled, unconsciously tucking her hair behind her ear. "Rachel." Emma pretended to check her phone, but then quickly intervened. "Listen, Daniel." Her voice became a little stern. "Rachel is married, and she has a wonderful husband. I think she's just having a nice evening with a friend." Daniel didn't back down. He looked over at Emma, smiling lightly. "Of course, I understand. Just a friendly conversation." Rachel gave her friend a quick glance that was a mixture of surprise and slight irritation. I'm just talking," she said quietly, but there was something new in her voice. Emma frowned, her worry growing. She had known Rachel for years and had never seen her so interested in someone else. "Okay, I understand it's time for me to order another cocktail," Emma said dryly, getting up from the table. "But I hope you remember who's waiting for you at home, Ratch." When Emma walked away, Daniel took the opportunity to sit a little closer. "And your friend is very strict," he grinned. "Is she always so protective of you?" Rachel took a sip of her cocktail, trying to hide her slight nervousness. "Emma is just worried. She has known me for a long time. Still, sometimes close friends may not understand what we really need," Daniel said, tilting his head slightly to the side. Rachel looked at him, feeling something inside her tremble. Was it just flirting or something more? She didn't know yet, but she understood one thing for sure. This evening had already become much more interesting than she had expected. The clock struck midnight when Emma realized she had drunk too much. My head was spinning slightly, and the words merged into one warm wave of noise. Rachel was also tipsy, but not to the point of losing control. Daniel, who had been watching both of them closely, smiled discreetly and took out his phone. "I think it's time to take you home," he said, calling a taxi for Emma. Emma frowned with displeasure, but knew there was no point in arguing. She gave Rachel a sharp look, but said nothing. 10 minutes later, the car was already waiting at the entrance to the bar. "Take care of yourself," she said quietly, hugging her friend. Rachel nodded and waved after her. As the car disappeared around the bend, she turned to Daniel. "What about me?" she asked with a smile. Daniel tilted his head slightly to the side, appraising her. There was undisguised interest in his eyes. "I don't think you're ready to go home yet. Come to my place. Let's have another glass and relax." Rachel didn't answer right away. Somewhere deep down, she knew she was overstepping the mark, but a desire was already flaring up inside her, something wild, primal that she had not felt for a long time. Leo was caring, perfect, but with Daniel there was something different, something wrong and at the same time frighteningly attractive. "Yes," she whispered, feeling the trembling in her voice. The drive to Daniel's apartment was silent. The tension between them was becoming unbearable. As soon as the door closed behind them, he handed her a glass of wine, but she put it aside. Their gazes met, and everything became extremely clear. He pulled her towards him. Their lips met in a kiss full of hunger and desire. His hands slid over her body, causing goosebumps. Rachel didn't think about tomorrow, about Leo, about morality, only about how greedily her body responded to Daniel's touches. They were in no hurry. Every kiss, every movement was filled with passion, an indomitable attraction that was impossible to resist. He was rougher, more insistent, not at all like Leo, and that's what she liked. Once they were in his bed, reality ceased to exist. There were only the two of them left, their breath mixed in the darkness, and the intensity of passion burning away the last vestiges of doubt. That night, Rachel betrayed her husband for the first time, and what was worst of all, she liked it. Leo woke up in the middle of the night and automatically extended his hand towards Rachel. Cold sheets. He opened his eyes, blinked away the drowsiness, and looked at his watch. 3:27 m. Something pricked unpleasantly inside. She had never stayed out so late, especially without warning. At first, he tried to calm himself down. Maybe she just stayed too long with Emma, drank too much, and decided to stay with her. It seemed logical. He even forced himself to lie down, close his eyes, and take a few deep breaths. But with every minute, the anxiety grew. He reached for his phone and tried to call her. The beep sounded, but there was no answer. Time after time, her voicemail became the only sound in the silence of the night. Leo sat on the edge of the bed, running his hand over his face. He felt something unpleasant brewing inside. Fear, anger, he didn't know. All he knew was that he didn't like this feeling. He got up, walked around the room, then to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water. Sip after sip, but the tension did not go away. The night seemed endless. He turned on the TV, but even his favorite news could not distract him. The same question kept ringing in my head. Where is she? When the clock struck 6 in the morning, the door finally opened. Leo immediately stood up from the couch, his heart beating faster. Rachel entered quietly, taking off her shoes as if hoping not to wake him. "Good morning," he said, hiding the tension in his voice. She shuddered, but quickly pulled herself together and smiled. "Oh, you're not sleeping." She chuckled nervously. "Sorry, I didn't notice how time flew by. Emma and I had too much, and I had to stay with her. I didn't want to wake you up in the middle of the night." Leo nodded, carefully watching her movements. She looked tired, but there was something else in her eyes. An elusive expression, a shadow of concern, or was he just screwing himself over? "You could at least write," he said calmly. Rachel looked away, plastering a tired smile on her face. "I know. The phone is dead. Sorry. You're not angry, are you?" She walked up to him and gently ran her hand over his shoulder. Leo looked at her, feeling inner anxiety. He ran his hand over her arm, squeezing her fingers a little tighter than usual. "No, of course." His voice was even, but everything was turning upside down inside. She quickly kissed him on the cheek and went into the bedroom, throwing her purse on the bed. Leo exhaled slowly and sat back down on the couch. But his thoughts did not give him peace. Something's wrong. He felt it. Rachel nervously tapped her fingernail on her mojito glass, looking at her friend. Emma sat opposite her with her arms crossed over her chest, clearly feeling that this conversation would not be easy. "Are you sure you want to tell me this?" Emma asked, narrowing her eyes slightly. Rachel took a deep breath, looking down. "I cheated on Leo," she breathed and immediately raised the glass to her lips, as if alcohol could soften the severity of these words. Emma froze, her face falling in surprise. "What?" "Rachel, are you serious?" Her voice sounded quieter than usual, but there was a clear reproach in it. Rachel nodded, pursing her lips. Then, unable to stand the tense silence, she smiled nervously. It was incredible. A strange sparkle flashed in her eyes. "You see, it wasn't like with Leo. Passion, desire, fire, everything is different." Emma shook her head, putting down her glass. Her fingers clenched into a fist. "And you talk about this with delight? God, Rachel, you have the perfect husband. How could you?" Rachel pressed her lips together, but then exhaled sharply and looked back at her friend. "I didn't plan this, Em. It just happened. I don't know how to explain. I just felt like I was alive. Not his wife, not part of Leo's ideal world, but himself." Emma furrowed her eyebrows and leaned closer. That's not an excuse, Rachel. Leo worships you. Do you have any idea what will happen to him if he finds out? Rachel looked away, biting her lip. I don't want him to know. It was a mistake. But at the same time, it wasn't. I don't know. She rubbed her temples as if hoping to disperse the chaos in her head. Will you tell him? Emma sighed heavily, then shook her head. No, but Rachel, it's your responsibility. You have to decide how to live with this. Rachel nodded slowly, but deep down she already knew that this conversation was just the beginning. Emma straightened up and looked at her more harshly. Wait, I want to understand. Are you going to repeat this? Or was this just an isolated incident? Rachel nervously twirled the straw in her hands, avoiding her friend's gaze. I don't know, Em. I felt so free, like I was 20 again. But I love Leo. She stopped short, as if she didn't believe her words. Or at least I thought I did. Emma frowned even deeper. You can't love him and sleep with someone else at the same time, Rachel. It doesn't work like that. What if I'm confused? She answered sharply, now throwing an angry look at her friend. What if I'm missing something? If Leo is so obsessed with order that I no longer feel alive around him? Emma ran her hand over her face, exhaling heavily. And you think the answer to that is another man? I don't know. Rachel covered her face with her hands. I just don't know what I want. Emma looked at her carefully, then took her hand. Then figure it out. Because if you continue, Leo will find out sooner or later. And if he finds out, it will kill him. Rachel closed her eyes. She knew her friend was right, but she also knew that something inside her had already changed, and turning everything back would not be so easy. Leo felt the anxiety that settled in his soul gradually grow. He couldn't explain the source, but something in Rachel's behavior had changed. She became more thoughtful, her touches less frequent, and her kisses cooler. He tried to convince himself that this was just fatigue, a temporary period that happens in any relationship. Today, he decided to correct the situation. They had not been close for a long time, and he missed his wife. I wanted to feel her next to me again, to feel her warmth. The evening turned out to be quiet. They had dinner together, watched a movie, and everything seemed normal. But something distant flashed in her gaze. When they got into bed, Leo gently pulled her close to him, ran his hand over her shoulder, then down to her waist. He leaned down, kissing her neck, hoping to feel that connection again. Leo. Her voice was quiet, tense. He didn't stop. He smiled slightly, continuing to gently caress her. You're so beautiful. I missed you, he whispered, sliding his lips to her collarbone. But Rachel suddenly tensed, her body frozen in his arms. Leo, no. She carefully pulled away, squeezing his hand in hers. Sorry. I'm tired. He pulled away, looking at her. Something like fear flashed in her eyes, but she quickly turned away, settling down on the pillow. Tired? He repeated, trying to hide his disappointment. Are you okay? Yes, it's just. I need a little time. She smiled tightly, but her voice trembled. Leo took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. He didn't want to put pressure on her, but something broke inside. He knew it wasn't just fatigue, but I decided not to insist. Okay, I understand, he said softly, turning on his back and looking at the ceiling. Rachel clutched the corner of the pillow, facing the wall. She was disgusted. I'm disgusted with myself, with what she did. Leo was good, caring, loving, and she betrayed him. The thought of this was eating her up from the inside. How could I do this to him? He doesn't suspect anything. He still looks at me with love. What about me? I betrayed him. And not just like that, I did it consciously, knowing that I was destroying everything that we have. I thought I could forget it, but every touch he touches now reminds me of my lies. She closed her eyes, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. I devalued everything we built, our moments, our dreams, his trust. I ruined it with one decision. For what? For the sake of fleeting passion? Is this worth his kindness, his love? Rachel hugged her pillow tighter, as if trying to hide from her own thoughts. I can't do this anymore. It was a mistake. Horrible, Disgusting mistake, but I won't repeat it. I will do anything to get myself back, to bring us back." She took a deep breath, trying to suppress the rising wave of despair, but a quiet voice was heard inside her, disgusting, malicious. "Are you sure?" Several days passed, but Rachel still felt the weight of guilt that burned her inside. Every time she looked at Leo, she saw his warm smile, his trusting gaze, his hands that always reached out to her with love. It was killing her. She promised herself that she would not repeat the mistake again, but the memories haunted her. They popped up at the most unexpected moments, when he leaned over to kiss her, when he hugged her before bed. She couldn't shake the taste of betrayal. She decided that she had to bring herself back into their relationship. "I need to feel like I'm part of this marriage again, part of Leo." She wanted to prove, first of all, to herself that he was the only man she wanted, that their passion has not faded, that she can still be his devoted wife, that she truly loves him. That evening she was waiting for him from work, having prepared dinner, lit candles, and put on a silk robe over thin linen. She wanted to create that very atmosphere when they were happy. When Leo entered the house, slightly surprised by this picture, his lips stretched into a smile, but a shadow of a question flashed in his eyes. "What is this special occasion?" he asked, placing the case by the door. Rachel walked up to him, wrapped her arms around his neck, and inhaled his scent, so familiar, so safe. She wanted to dissolve in this moment, forget herself, erase from her memory what tormented her. "I just want to thank you for what you are," she whispered, clinging to him. Leo narrowed his eyes, sliding his hands over her waist. "Gratitude? Interesting way," he grinned, but there was warm tenderness in his voice. Rachel didn't let him finish, sealing his lips with a kiss. She felt his body tense under her touch, his breathing getting heavier. Desire overwhelmed her, erasing all doubts, all remorse. She needed this. They needed it. She wanted him to own her, so that his love would wash away her guilt, so that she could convince herself that she still belonged only to him. She knelt down in front of him, her fingers leisurely unbuckling his belt, sliding over his skin as he looked down at her, his breathing ragged. "Damn, Rachel," was all he breathed out before giving in to the sensations. Her every movement was filled with despair, greed, the desire to convince herself that she was capable of being faithful. Leo ran his fingers through her hair, his body tensed, and she felt him give himself completely to her. This feeling his dependence on her, his passion was exactly what she needed right now. But this was not enough. When he lifted her from his lap, his eyes blazing with desire, he wordlessly picked her up and carried her into the bedroom. There, in the darkness, they disappeared into each other. Leo was greedy, demanding, his hands holding her tightly, as if he was afraid that she would disappear. He found her lips, her neck, and each of his kisses was saturated with love. And Rachel clung to him, as if trying to hold on to the edge of the abyss. That night she loved him like never before. With hunger, with despair, with the desire to drown in it, to get rid of the taste of betrayal on your lips. She craved him, hoping that if she gave herself completely, her guilt would disappear. Leo responded to her with the same passion, squeezing her body tightly, making her gasp with pleasure. When it was over, she pressed herself against his chest, closing her eyes, her breathing ragged. "Everything will be fine now," she told herself. "I'll fix everything. I'll make him happy. I'll forget." But even at that moment, a shadow of doubt still glimmered inside her. Is this true? Rachel walked down the street, enjoying the cool autumn air. After that night with Leo, she felt lighter, almost free of guilt. She tried to convince herself that it was just a passing episode, a mistake that she left in the past. Now she was a faithful wife. Everything had to be right now. But the past was not going to let her go. "Rachel." The voice sounded so unexpectedly that she froze in place. She slowly turned around and saw Daniel. He stood just a few steps away, his dark eyes studying her carefully. He looked as perfect as the night she first gave in to temptation. Everything inside tightened. "You, what are you doing here?" Her voice trembled. Daniel took a step forward, his gaze filled with determination. I was looking for you, he said, looking her straight in the eyes. I can't live without you, Rachel. Since you left, I haven't stopped thinking about you. Her heart beat faster. She shouldn't have listened to him. She shouldn't even be standing here. But his words ran deeper than she cared to admit. Daniel, it was a mistake, she whispered, trying to keep her voice firm. I love my husband. He chuckled, shaking his head. If it were just a mistake, you would have forgotten me a long time ago. But you remember, just like me. You feel it, Rachel. Tell me I'm wrong. She clenched her hands into fists, not knowing what to say. He took a step closer again, his voice soft but insistent. I've never met anyone who makes me feel the way I feel around you. You are special. You know that yourself. You can try to forget me, but I'm already inside you, in your thoughts, in your desires. His fingers lightly touched her wrist, and this light touch sent goosebumps across her skin. Daniel, her voice trembled, and she hated herself for it. You know that with me you feel alive, real. His voice became even lower, more velvety. When I touch you, you lose control. Can he make you scream with pleasure the way I can? Does he know how to make you crazy with desire? He leaned closer, his breath burning her skin. Or does he just think everything is fine as long as you lie next to me and dream about me? Rachel clenched her teeth as she felt the thin ice she was standing on begin to crack. Her mind screamed at her to leave, but his words pierced the very depths of her soul, awakening memories of nights when she truly forgot about everything. Admit it, Rachel, he continued, his lips almost brushing her ear. With me, you are real. You want it just as much as I do. You know I'm right. She closed her eyes, cursing herself for this. She swore that she would not repeat the mistake, but her body already remembered everything. Rachel clenched her fists, her breath coming in short gasps, her heart pounding as if it was trying to escape her chest. She knew she had to leave. She promised herself that she wouldn't give in again. But Daniel stood in front of her, too close, too confident, too desirable. You can run away, Rachel, he whispered, his lips barely touching her ear, but you will still come back to me. Because no one can give you what I give. Her eyes darted, her mind kept saying, no, but her body already remembered how he touched her, how he made her lose control. He ran his fingers down her neck, slowly sliding along the line of her collarbone. She held her breath. Daniel, her voice trembled, but she did not move away. Let's talk somewhere without prying eyes, he said, gently taking her wrist. Rachel didn't resist when he opened the taxi door for her. She knew where they were going, but she didn't try to stop herself. A few minutes later, they were walking up the stairs to his apartment. As soon as the door closed behind them, he pulled her towards him with the same confidence that had once made her lose her head. Does your husband make you choke with desire? Does he know how to make you shiver, make your nails dig into your skin, beg for more? His hand slowly went down her back, pressing her to him. You can lie to yourself, but your body doesn't lie. His lips covered hers, and she gave in. She felt her resistance crumble, how everything inside her exploded with passion. Daniel picked her up and carried her into the bedroom, setting her down on the soft sheets. He looked at her as if she were a jewel that he wanted to enjoy without haste. You are mine, he whispered, lowering himself to her chest, leaving fiery traces of kisses on it. Admit it. She arched towards him, her moans became louder, her hands trembled, tearing off his clothes. His every movement was greedy, confident, as if he knew it was inevitable. She wanted to stop, but her body no longer belonged to her. He studied her with patience and obsession, making her writhe in pleasure before taking her completely. He felt how she melted in his hands, how her body reacted to his every touch. She couldn't stop herself. Her back arched, her breathing was interrupted, her mind dissolved in a whirlwind of passion. Daniel! Her voice broke into a scream as he brought her to the peak of pleasure. Her body shook, her nails dug into his back, waves of pleasure came over and over again until she was left exhausted. He didn't stop. He greedily explored her, forcing her to reach the limit of pleasure again and again. In this madness, she felt the boundaries between right and forbidden disappear. Here, in his arms, she was a different woman, not a faithful wife, but someone hungry for passion, who was willing to forget everything for this moment. When it was over, Rachel lay next to her, looking at the ceiling. Her body trembled with residual pleasure, but an emptiness settled in her soul. She crossed the line again, betrayed again. Daniel lazily turned to her, ran his fingers along her thigh and grinned. "Are you still going to say that you didn't want this?" She closed her eyes, trying to drown out the voice of her conscience. But even now, when her body still remembered his caresses, somewhere deep inside there was a treacherous whisper, "You won't be able to stop." Rachel opened her eyes. My heart was pounding, my breathing was heavy. For several seconds, she tried to figure out where she was. The sun's rays made their way through the half-closed curtains. The soft sheets felt pleasantly cool on the skin. But this was not her bedroom. Daniel was breathing peacefully nearby, his hand still on her waist. Memories of the previous night came rushing back to her, making her stomach clench with a mixture of pleasure and horror. She closed her eyes, trying to drown out the voice of her conscience. "What have I done?" Rachel carefully pulled herself away from his arm and sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the sheets with her fingers. Her mind demanded to leave immediately, to forget all this, to erase it from her memory. She promised herself that she wouldn't give in again, and here she is again, betraying Leo again. She looked back. Daniel was sleeping, a slight smile playing on his lips, as if he knew that she would return anyway. This made her angry, and at the same time it was exciting. But not now. Not after she felt like a monster again. She gathered her clothes, trying not to make a sound. Every movement seemed slow, heavy. When she was finally dressed, Daniel stirred and opened his eyes. His voice was hoarse from sleep. "Are you leaving so early?" A grin slid across his lips. "Would you like to repeat it?" Rachel tensed, her hands clenched into fists. "It was a mistake," she whispered. Daniel laughed, stretching. "Of course it was. Just like the first time. And what will happen next time?" She gave him an irritated look, but didn't answer. She turned around and walked out, loudly slamming the door behind her. When Rachel returned home, an alarm was already waiting for her. Leo. She didn't know what to say, how to explain her absence. There were several missed calls on her phone. Her heart sank as she imagined him lying in their bed at night, alone, wondering where she was. She opened the door and immediately heard his voice. "Rachel, where have you been?" Leo walked out of the kitchen, worry evident on his face. He was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair tousled. He clearly didn't sleep well. Her voice trembled. "I stayed with Emma. We needed to talk. I just fell asleep." Leo looked at her longer than usual, his eyes searching her as if he was trying to find answers where she tried so hard to hide the truth. "You could at least write," he finally said, his voice calm, but there was something else in it. Something that made her shudder internally. "Sorry, I'm just tired," she said quickly, avoiding his gaze. "I need a shower." She walked past him, feeling his gaze on her back. She felt that he suspected something, or maybe she was just going crazy with her own guilt. Rachel closed her eyes as the hot water splashed onto her skin, hoping it would wash away all traces of the previous evening. But she knew the truth. At that moment, the phone on the nightstand vibrated. Message from Daniel. "I know you'll come back." Rachel dropped her phone into the sink, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it pounding in her ears. She swore she wouldn't give in again, but something inside her already knew. The fight was just beginning. Rachel tried to act normal. She smiled at Leo, prepared his favorite dishes, and tried to pay more attention to him. She told herself that this would make everything better, that if she was an ideal wife, her guilt would disappear. But the reality was different. Every time Leo hugged or touched her, she felt something clench inside her. Her body remembered Daniel. His touch, his smell, his voice whispering in her ear that she belongs only to him. She tried to drive away these thoughts, but they haunted her. The worst part was that Daniel had no intention of disappearing. He wrote to her every day. First short messages, just hints. "Thinking about me? Are you bored?" then more persistent. You know you want me. Don't pretend to be happy with him. She didn't answer, but she couldn't bring herself to block his number. She erased the messages, but they remained in her memory, making her heart beat faster. Leo noticed that she was different. Outwardly, everything was the same, but he felt that something had changed. She was nervous, turned away more often, checked her phone when she thought he wasn't looking. Sometimes he caught her glance, filled with anxiety, but she immediately looked away. One day at dinner, he asked cautiously, "Is everything okay, honey?" Rachel looked up at him and nodded too quickly. "Yes, sure, just tired from work. Now is the season. There are a lot of customers." Leo nodded, but his doubts did not disappear. He knew Rachel too well not to notice that she was lying. But so far he did not understand what exactly was hidden behind her tense smile. At night, when Rachel had already fallen asleep, her phone vibrated again. Leo opened his eyes and looked at the screen, lit by a weak light. "You can't hide from me," appeared on the display. Leo didn't know who wrote it, but that night his doubts grew even stronger. Rachel sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had been standing in the parking lot for 10 minutes, trying to force herself to leave. But she couldn't. The phone vibrated again, flashing the name she was so afraid to see. "Daniel, you'll come, won't you?" She closed her eyes, fighting the urge to answer right away. She shouldn't have even read his messages, shouldn't have found herself in this position again. But something inside her screamed, demanded, begged for a repetition. The phone lit up again. "Daniel, don't pretend you don't want it. I know you, Rachel." She took a deep breath, then exhaled slowly. She knew that if she pressed the gas and drove away, she would save herself, save your marriage. But if it remains, she wasn't sure if she wanted to keep it. When she entered his apartment, he was already waiting for her. Leaning against the wall, his arms crossed over his chest, Daniel smiled as if he knew for sure that she would not be able to resist. "I knew you would come." His voice was low and velvety. Rachel closed the door behind her, still not approaching him. "It's a mistake," she whispered. Daniel grinned and stepped closer. "Then why are you here?" His fingers lay on her wrist, lightly but powerfully. "Why didn't you turn around and leave?" "I tried." Her voice trembled. "I really tried." "Not strong enough." He lowered his head, his lips hovering a millimeter from her neck. "Because you want it." "No." The protest was weak, almost unconvincing. "Yes." His voice was soft, hypnotic. "I see it in your eyes. I see how you tremble, how hard you breathe." He ran his fingertips across her cheek. "You can lie to yourself, but not to me." Rachel winced. She couldn't deny that desire was burning inside her, a desire she was ashamed to admit. "Leo," she whispered, trying to stay on the edge of the abyss. Daniel chuckled. "Your husband doesn't even know what you can be. The way you moan when you lose control. The way your nails dig into your skin as you reach the top. You know I'm right." Her breathing became ragged. She felt the last shackles of morality cracking. He knew her too well. He knew which strings to push. "Daniel," her voice was pleading, but she didn't know whether she was begging him to stop or to continue. He didn't wait any longer. His lips covered hers with greed, with a demand that made her dizzy. Her resistance disappeared in the flames of desire. This time, she didn't even try to justify herself. Rachel sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had been standing in the parking lot for 10 minutes, trying to force herself to leave. But she couldn't. The phone vibrated again, flashing the name she was so afraid to see. "Daniel, you'll come, won't you?" She closed her eyes, fighting the urge to answer right away. She shouldn't have even read his messages, shouldn't have found herself in this position again. But something inside her screamed, demanded, begged for a repetition. The phone lit up again. "Daniel, don't pretend you don't want it. I know you, Rachel." She took a deep breath, then exhaled slowly. She knew that if she pressed the gas and drove away, she would save herself, save your marriage. But if it remains, she wasn't sure if she wanted to keep it. When she entered his apartment, He was already waiting for her. Leaning against the wall, his arms crossed over his chest, Daniel smiled as if he knew for sure that she would not be able to resist. "I knew you would come." His voice was low and velvety. Rachel closed the door behind her, still not approaching him. "It's a mistake," she whispered. Daniel grinned and stepped closer. "Then why are you here?" His fingers lay on her wrist, lightly but powerfully. "Why didn't you turn around and leave?" "I tried." Her voice trembled. "I really tried." "Not strong enough." He lowered his head, his lips hovering a millimeter from her neck. "Because you want it." "No." The protest was weak, almost unconvincing. "Yes." His voice was soft, hypnotic. "I see it in your eyes. I see how you tremble, how hard you breathe." He ran his fingertips across her cheek. "You can lie to yourself, but not to me." Rachel winced. She couldn't deny that desire was burning inside her, a desire she was ashamed to admit. "Leo," she whispered, trying to stay on the edge of the abyss. Daniel chuckled. "Your husband doesn't even know what you can be. The way you moan when you lose control. The way your nails dig into your skin as you reach the top. You know I'm right." Her breathing became ragged. She felt the last shackles of morality cracking. He knew her too well. He knew which strings to push. "Daniel," her voice was pleading, but she didn't know whether she was begging him to stop or to continue. He didn't wait any longer. His lips covered hers with greed, with a demand that made her dizzy. Her resistance disappeared in the flames of desire. 2 hours passed. Rachel lay on her back, breathing heavily. Daniel ran his fingers lazily along her thigh, grinning in satisfaction. "And you will say again that it was a mistake?" His voice was mocking. She closed her eyes. Her body was relaxed, but inside everything was compressed into a tight knot. She couldn't stay here any longer. "I need to go," she said dully, sitting up on the bed. "Of course." Daniel leaned back on the pillow. "But you'll come back anyway." Rachel didn't answer. She got dressed without looking at him and left, slamming the door. A storm was raging inside her, but she forced herself to breathe evenly. She promised herself that this wouldn't happen again, but a deep fear told her that Daniel was right. At this moment, on the other side of the city, Leo was sitting in the doctor's office. The doctor looked carefully at his tests and then looked up at him. "We need to talk, Leo." Leo sat in the doctor's office, feeling his heart pounding in his chest. The doctor leafed through his tests. His face remained serious and tense. There was silence in the room, interrupted only by the occasional flipping of papers. "We need to talk seriously, Leo," the doctor finally said, looking up at him with a tired look. "Your tests show." He sighed, collecting his thoughts. "You have a very difficult situation. I don't want to scare you ahead of time, but we need to conduct additional examinations. There are suspicions of a serious pathology." Leo frowned and clenched his fists. "How? Serious?" His voice sounded evenly, but everything went cold inside. The doctor paused, as if trying to find soft words. "It could be cancer," he finally breathed. "We need additional tests, but if the diagnosis is confirmed, we will need to act immediately." It was as if the world around Leo had stopped. The room seemed too narrow to him, the air too heavy. He could not move, could not even comprehend what he had heard. All he could think about was Rachel, her warm eyes, her smile, her touch. He wanted to tell her. He had to tell her. But anxious thoughts surfaced in my head. She hasn't been like this in recent weeks. Something has changed. He felt it, but didn't want to believe it. And now? "How soon will I know for sure?" he asked hoarsely. "Within a few days." "We will organize everything as quickly as possible," the doctor nodded. "But Leo, you need to prepare yourself mentally. If the diagnosis is confirmed, the fight will be difficult." Leo nodded silently. He stood up as if in a daze, shaking the doctor's hand. His thoughts were racing. He left the office, got into the car, and just looked out the windshield. He had to go home. To Rachel. Tell her. But can he? The road to home stretched into infinity. Leo drove slowly, his fingers gripping the steering wheel tightly. He tried to collect his thoughts, but anxiety squeezed his throat. Moments from their life together flashed before her eyes. Their first date, their wedding, how he carried her in his arms, how he promised to love her always. When he arrived at the house, he just sat for several minutes, looking at the front door. He knew that as soon as he crossed the threshold, reality would hit him with full force. He will get out of the car, enter the house, look into her eyes. And what? How to say this to the woman you love more than life itself? He exhaled heavily and got out of the car. Every step was difficult. Opening the door, he heard silence. Strange. Rachel usually greeted him, smiled, hugged him, and asked him how his day was. Rachel, he called, but there was no answer. Leo walked into the living room. Her phone was on the table. Next to her was an unfinished cup of coffee. Everything looked as if she had been here just recently, but she herself was not there. Something inside him tightened. He dialed her number. Beeps. 1, 2, 3. Hello, you're calling Rachel. Leave a message. Her voice rang out, but not live, but from the answering machine. Leo clutched the phone in his hand, his fingers turning white. He looked up at his watch. It was already late. Where is she? At that moment, a message arrived on his phone. Leo looked at the screen. Unfamiliar number. He opened the message, and the world around him collapsed. Your wife is with me now. Don't you think she's late too often? A sharp pain pierced my chest. Leo slowly sank down onto the couch, his breathing ragged. He read the message over and over again, hoping that it was some kind of mistake, someone's cruel joke. But deep down, he already knew the truth. Rachel cheated on him. Everything he had been feeling for the last few weeks now took shape. All the doubts, the anxious glances, her strange behavior, he didn't want to believe it. Not now. Not when he needed her support so much. The phone vibrated again. Maybe you should ask her yourself. Leo closed his eyes, trying to drown out the storm inside him. He had to do something. He had to find her. And he will do it right now. Leo couldn't stay in this empty, cold apartment. The air seemed viscous, as if even the walls were pressing on it. He grabbed his keys and walked out, not knowing where he was going until his car stopped in front of his mother's house. She opened the door almost immediately, looking at him in surprise. Leo, what's happened? Her eyes immediately filled with anxiety. You look pale. Are you sick? Leo sighed heavily as he walked inside. He sat down on the sofa, squeezing his head in his hands. Mom, I don't know how to say this. I think Rachel is cheating on me. His voice was dull, filled with pain. The mother froze, her face tense. Son, are you sure? She asked carefully. No, he shook his head. But I feel it. She has changed. She became distant. And today I received a message. Someone wrote that she is not alone now. His mother sat down next to him and took his hand. Leo, did you talk to her? Maybe this is just some kind of misunderstanding. Her voice was soft, but pain for her son was visible in her eyes. I don't know what to do, Mom. He looked up at her. I must find out the truth. But I'm afraid. If this is true, I don't know how I can survive this, especially now. You're not alone, son. His mother squeezed his hand tighter. But you must be prepared for any outcome. If she betrayed you, you must give yourself time to understand everything. You must decide what is more important to you, truth or illusion. Leo nodded, took a deep breath, and exhaled. He couldn't wait any longer. He had to see everything with his own eyes. Returning home, he felt his anxiety growing with every kilometer. Maybe this is just a stupid mistake. Maybe she really was at Emma's or was delayed for work. Maybe. He parked the car, but was in no hurry to get out. His hands were shaking, his head was throbbing with tension. He looked at the light in their bedroom windows and felt something cold, like a premonition of disaster, envelop his mind. He closed his eyes, trying to convince himself that all his suspicions were just a figment of his imagination. But all hopes crumbled to dust when he opened the door and heard a sound. Muffled laughter, whisper, and then a groan. The world around him went dark. Everything went cold inside. He moved slowly down the corridor, not feeling his steps. His breathing became ragged, every muscle tensed as if about to strike. The bedroom door was ajar. He pushed her. Rachel, she, in their bed, in their house, in the arms of another. For a second, everything froze. Time has stopped. He saw her pale face, wide eyes, panicked look. She sat up abruptly, pulling the sheet over her body, as if the thin fabric could hide her betrayal. Leo. Her voice was hoarse, full of panic. The man next to her turned around, but Leo didn't see him. He only saw her betrayal, her lies, her choice. There was no anger or pain left inside him, only emptiness. He felt his hands clenched into fists, but he didn't even try to take a step forward. He just stood there, watching everything he thought was his crumble. You could at least knock, the lover challenged, without hiding his grin. Leo didn't even look at him. His gaze was fixed on Rachel, to the woman he loved more than life itself, to a woman who chose someone else. Choose, his voice sounded unexpectedly calm. Are you staying or leaving? Silence filled the room. Rachel clutched the sheet convulsively, her lips trembling, but she did not say a word. Leo was waiting, but he already knew the answer. The room froze in tense silence. Leo stood in the doorway, his gaze cold and empty. Everything inside him was turning upside down, but he didn't let his emotions break through. Rachel sat on the bed, clutching the sheets, her breathing coming in short gasps. Daniel, her lover, stretched lazily, casting a mocking glance at Leo, but he did not notice him. Now only she existed. Choose, Leo repeated. His voice sounded unexpectedly calm, but in this silence every word cut the air like a knife. Rachel swallowed, her heart beating wildly. It seemed to her that this moment lasted forever. She looked at Leo, at his tense face, his tired, but still so familiar eyes. Something squeezed painfully inside, but then quieted down. Then her gaze slid to Daniel. He was so free, cocky, his confidence drove her crazy. She couldn't deny that he made her feel alive. Leo, her voice broke. She didn't know how to say it, but she knew she had no choice. Sorry, but I'm leaving. The words hung in the air, filling every dark crevice of their past. Leo nodded slowly. He already knew what she would say. Somewhere deep down, he felt that this moment was inevitable. The pain was sobering, but he couldn't afford to show it. Then pack your things, he said calmly, but there was no pain or anger in his voice, only fatigue. This is my home, and you won't stay here anymore. Rachel felt her insides tighten. She chose Daniel, but now this decision has become real, irreversible. Her hands shook as she pulled on her clothes, throwing everything she could get her hands on into her bag. Her movements were sharp and clumsy. She tried not to look at Leo, not to see in his eyes what was destroying her from the inside. Take your time, baby, Daniel said lazily, getting out of bed and putting on his pants. We have nowhere to rush. Leo didn't even look at him. For him, this man was an empty place, an unnecessary detail in this scene. Everything that concerned him ended with Rachel. She threw the last of her things into her bag, nervously zipped it up, and straightened up. She stood there for several seconds, as if expecting something, as if hoping that he would stop her. But he didn't say a word. Leo, she began, but he had already turned away, hiding his hands in his pockets. Go away, Rachel. His voice was quiet but firm. She felt tears welling up in her throat, but held back. She made her choice. Now it was too late to regret. She slowly walked out the door, feeling her world crumble, but not stopping. Daniel followed her, smiling smugly as if he had just won a battle. Leo heard the front door close behind them. Silence filled the house, leaving an emptiness in its wake. He slowly sank down onto the sofa, covering his face with his hands. Pain washed over him like a wave, but he did not let it escape. He just sat there, listening to the silence. Rachel chose, and now he had to live with it. Rachel was sitting at a table in a cozy cafe, holding a cup of latte in her hands. She mechanically stirred the foam with a spoon, but hardly touched the drink. Emma, her best friend, sat opposite her, watching her carefully. Well, Emma finally asked, resting her chin on her hand. You achieved what you wanted. Freedom. New man. No more secrets. Are you satisfied? Rachel winced, snapping out of her thoughts. She looked at her friend and smiled faintly. Of course, she answered hesitantly. Everything is exactly as I wanted. Emma squinted, studying her face carefully. Then why do you look like you're not happy about this? Rachel sighed, looking away. She didn't know what to say. It really seemed to her that everything should be different now. She imagined her life with Daniel as passionate, free, devoid of the routine that she had with Leo. But the reality turned out to be strange. It's just. She took a sip of coffee, trying to find the words. It's not quite what I expected. Daniel is different. When we saw each other secretly, everything was different adrenaline, emotions. And now? Is everything normal now? Emma guessed. Rachel nodded. He's still caring, but not as much as before. He used to admire me and woo me. And now, when I'm around, he has not exactly cooled off, but he no longer sees in me that secret passion that united us. Emma shook her head and asked carefully, Do you regret your choice? Rachel tensed. This question had been in her head since the very night when she left the threshold of her and Leo's house. She couldn't give herself an honest answer. She didn't want to admit that she might have made a mistake. No, she said firmly. It just takes time to get used to it. Emma nodded silently, but there was doubt in her eyes. Rachel felt slightly irritated. Why can't anyone just support her choice? Why does everyone want her to doubt? I hope you're right, Emma said quietly. But if you suddenly realize that this is not what you wanted, don't be afraid to admit it. Even to myself. Rachel clutched the cup in her hands, but didn't say anything. Somewhere deep inside, she already knew that the answer scared her most. Rachel sat at the table in the law office, holding a pen. Divorce papers lay in front of her. She looked at them, but the letters blurred before her eyes. My head was buzzing. This should have been just a formality, a logical conclusion to her story with Leo, but for some reason her fingers were trembling. Leo sat opposite, his face unreadable. He didn't say a word from the moment he entered the office. Even when the lawyer began to explain the standard legal points, Leo simply nodded, as if none of this concerned him. But Rachel knew that wasn't the case. She felt his tension and saw how he clenched his hands into fists under the table. All you have to do is sign, said the lawyer's voice, bringing her out of her daze. She took a deep breath, brought the pen to the paper, and froze. Is this what you want? She suddenly asked, looking up at Leo. He blinked slowly, his eyes empty and tired. Does it matter what I want? His voice was hoarse, but without malice. Rather, it sounded inevitable. Rachel felt something squeeze her chest. She lowered her eyes, took a deep breath, and signed. The ink lines seemed to cut through the past, turning them into two strangers. Leo took the pen and signed his part without hesitation. He put the documents in a folder, handed them to the lawyer, and stood up. Is that all? He asked dryly. Yes, the lawyer nodded. Within a month, the court will officially approve the divorce. Leo looked at Rachel one last time. There was no hatred in his gaze, just a deep, inevitable emptiness. Goodbye, Rachel, he said quietly and left, leaving her alone in the empty office. She remained sitting, looking at the papers, feeling the cold pierce her to the bone. She wanted this freedom. But why did she feel so lost? I don't know what to do, Emma. Rachel's voice shook as she pressed the phone to her ear. He comes late, drinks, and barely talks to me. This is not the Daniel I knew. I warned you, Ray. There was a sigh on the other end. Everything was exciting as long as it was forbidden fruit. And now? Rachel clenched her teeth, feeling the familiar pang of irritation. She didn't want to hear, I told you so. She wanted advice, support. But he was different, Emma, she whispered. He was passionate, attentive, and now? Now he got what he wanted, the friend interrupted harshly. And you too. Rachel was silent, listening to the quiet exhale heard on the phone. Emma softened. Listen, I don't want to finish you off, but you have to look at the situation soberly. Are you really happy? Rachel didn't answer. At that moment, she heard the apartment door open with a roar. Daniel walked in, his steps heavy, and he smelled of alcohol. Emma, I'll call you back, she said quickly and turned off the call. Where have you been? Her voice sounded quieter than she wanted. Daniel rolled his eyes. Don't start, Ray. I'm tired. I was with friends. All. With friends? Her fingers clenched into a fist. You've said that several times already. You don't even call. Because I don't have to report to you, he snapped, walking towards the closet. You knew what you were getting into. Rachel felt her insides tighten. She didn't recognize him. That Daniel with whom she had passion, desire, secret meetings, now a completely different person stood in front of her. Rude, indifferent. I thought you loved me, she whispered. He looked at her with a slight grin. I love it. Just don't choke me with your jealousy, okay? Rachel sat in the dark, wrapping her arms around herself. Daniel had been gone for 2 days. He didn't answer calls, didn't write messages. It became habitual, his leaving, his return in the morning with the smell of alcohol and other people's perfume. She was no longer fooling herself. He didn't love her. Maybe he never loved. When the front door slammed open, her heart jumped. Daniel walked in, staggering, with bleary eyes and a smug smile. You're sitting in the dark like a ghost again, he muttered, slamming the door. Where have you been? Her voice was quiet but firm. He chuckled, taking off his jacket and carelessly throwing it on the floor. Wherever I wanted, I was there. He stepped towards her, looking her up and down. Did you decide to test me? Rachel clenched her fists, forcing herself not to be afraid. I just want to understand who you are now. Because the Daniel I knew is no longer there. He grinned and leaned closer, reeking of alcohol. Baby, that Daniel never existed. You just saw what you wanted to see. She stumbled back, but he grabbed her wrist. Let me go, she said sharply, trying to break free, but his grip was steel. You're still not going anywhere. His voice became low, threatening. You left for me, remember? Now you are mine. He pushed her towards the sofa, leaning on top of her. Her breath hitched in horror. Daniel, don't you dare. Her voice trembled, but he just laughed. You always wanted passion, Ray. His hands squeezed her shoulders. She felt his weight, his hot breath. So here she is. Panic gripped her. She hit him, scratched him, but he didn't let go. Her heart was pounding, fear turning into pure terror. At some point, she managed to twist and hit him hard in the ribs with her elbow. Daniel cursed as he loosened his grip, and that was enough. She broke free, grabbed her bag, and ran out of the apartment without looking back. Her legs carried her on their own. She didn't know where she was running until she found herself in front of a familiar house, in front of Leo's house. She breathed heavily as she stood in front of the door, her fingers trembling as she pressed the bell. My heart was beating wildly. The door opened, but it wasn't Leo standing in front of it. His mother. The woman's eyes were tear-stained, her face was pale, her lips were trembling. Rachel. Her voice broke. He died. Rachel froze in the doorway, feeling the world crumble around her. She blinked several times, unable to believe what she was hearing. What? Her voice was barely audible. What did you say? Leo's mother pursed her lips, her eyes filling with tears again. He died, Rachel, the voice broke, but there was cold anger in it. While you were enjoying your new life, my son was dying alone. Rachel shook her head, taking a step forward, but the woman immediately raised her hand, stopping her from approaching. No, she said sharply. You don't dare be here. You left him when he needed you the most. He wanted to tell you. But you left. You betrayed him. Rachel gasped, tears already streaming down her cheeks. I didn't know, she whispered. You didn't even ask. Leo's mother laughed bitterly. He loved you, and you trampled him. And now why did you come here? Make excuses. Calm your conscience. It's late, Rachel. It's too late. She wanted to say something, but the words got stuck in her throat. Her heart was pounding, memories flashing through her head. Leo, his warm smile, his hands, his voice full of love, and she herself leaving his life. "I want to see him." She finally squeezed out, looking Leo's mother straight in the eyes. "I need to see him. I have to." The woman straightened up, her face turning to stone. "You have no right to do this. You don't deserve to say goodbye to him. You won't come to the funeral." Rachel gasped, grabbing the doorframe. "No, please. Go away," the mother said in an icy voice. "Go away and never come here again." The door slammed in her face. Rachel was left standing on the threshold, feeling her own heart breaking from the inside. She raised her hand to knock again, but her fingers froze in the air. What's the point? Leo is no more. She slowly turned around and walked away. The footsteps echoed loudly in her head. The wind threw cold drops of drizzling rain into her face, but she did not feel them. Memories came like an avalanche. She remembered how Leo held her hand on their wedding day, how he vowed to always be there, how he looked at her with such adoration, as if she was the whole world to him. She remembered how he smiled, how he laughed, how tenderly he touched her face in the morning, and how she destroyed it all. There was an emptiness in my chest that could no longer be filled with anything. She lost him forever. There was no more second chance, no more time to make things right. Her choice had been made, and now he was haunting her. She didn't know how long she just walked along the street until her feet led her to the cemetery. It was closed, but through the bars of the gate she saw a freshly dug grave. Her breath caught. Sorry, her lips moved, but her voice did not come out. She didn't know how long she stood there. Maybe a few minutes, maybe a few hours. Nobody drove her away. Nobody was waiting for her. She was left alone, and now she had to live with it. Rachel moved in with her parents. Her mother and father accepted her silently, without reproaches, without questions, but she felt their gaze on her. Full of anxiety, misunderstanding, regret. She was their daughter, but at the same time a stranger. She herself no longer knew who she was. Her days passed in emptiness. She woke up, but did not feel alive. The hours dragged on endlessly. She avoided meetings with her parents, locked herself in her old room, sat looking at one point, or lay in bed, not even having the strength to get up. The food became tasteless, the words of the parents became a distant echo. Everything reminded her of Leo. Any little thing, a song on the radio, the smell of coffee, old photographs. Memories washed over her like a wave, turning every day into torture. She tried to push them out, but they came back again and again. Then she found the only thing that could drown out the pain: alcohol. At first, it was just a glass of wine before bed, then another one, then something stronger. She thought it would help, that for a few hours she would forget what she had done, what she had ruined her life. But alcohol only worsened her fall. She didn't care. One night she was found on the bathroom floor. A bottle of whiskey was knocked over nearby, and she lay unconscious. Her mother was screaming, her father was shaking her shoulders, but she could not answer. The dark emptiness pulled her deeper and deeper. She woke up already in the hospital. There was an oxygen catheter in his nose and enrollment 4 in his arm. My head was pounding, there was a foul taste in my mouth, my body was exhausted. The first thing she saw was her mother's face, tired and devastated. "Did you want to kill yourself?" Her voice was hoarse from tears. Rachel didn't answer. She didn't know if she wanted this. She just wanted to stop feeling. "You've already killed yourself, Rachel," her mother whispered. "Only now you have to live with it." Rachel lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. There was nothing inside, no pain, no regret, no fear. The emptiness ate her from the inside, leaving only severe fatigue. She heard the door open, but didn't turn her head. She wasn't expecting anyone. Nobody was supposed to come. But she came. "Rachel," said a quiet but firm voice. She slowly turned her head and met the eyes of Leo's mother. There was something about them that made her heart clench. Pain, contempt, or something else. The woman stood straight, but her hands were shaking. They contained a sheet of paper folded into 4. "What? What do you need?" Rachel's voice was weak and hoarse. "This is for you. The woman came closer and put the letter on the bedside table. He wrote it before he passed away. Rachel sat up suddenly feeling a shiver run through her body. She stared at the letter, not daring to touch it. "Why are you? Why only now?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Because you didn't deserve him before," the answer was cold. "But maybe now that you've destroyed yourself, you can at least understand what you've lost." The woman paused for a moment, then turned and walked out, leaving Rachel alone with trembling hands and a bitter lump in her throat. She didn't open the letter right away. I couldn't. Only a few days later, when she was discharged from the hospital, did she go to where she was supposed to read it to Leo's grave. Bending in front of the tombstone, she carefully unfolded the folded piece of paper. His handwriting was neat, even, just as she remembered it. Rachel held her breath and began to read. Rachel took a deep breath, her fingers trembling as she unfolded the letter. The paper was slightly yellowed around the edges, as if it had absorbed time and pain. My heart was pounding dully in my chest. She knew there would be words inside that she might not be able to bear. She was afraid, but she couldn't help but read it. "Rachel, if you are reading this letter, it means I am no longer here. I don't know what circumstances led you to this moment, but if you are holding my words in your hands, it means you wanted to hear them, and that's already something. I tried for a long time to understand why everything turned out the way it did. Why didn't you choose me? Why wasn't I enough for you? And guess what? I'm no longer looking for an answer, because no matter how much it hurts me, I still love you. I don't want this letter to become another burden for you. If you came here with guilt, leave it here. Time cannot be returned. I can't change the way things turned out, but I can leave you with words that may help you move on. Don't blame yourself for what happened. You made your choice, and every choice has consequences. I'd like to think you're happy. But if you're here, if you're reading this, then maybe you didn't find what you were looking for. I leave you no reproaches. Just a request. Live. Don't lose yourself. I don't want my death to become another burden for you. If there was even a little goodness in me, let it stay with you. May your life be better than it was. Find the strength to forgive yourself as I have forgiven you. Goodbye, Rachel. With love, Leo." Rachel felt tears pour from her eyes, hot and burning, blurring the letters in front of her. She covered her mouth with her hand to keep from crying out loud, but her body was shaking. This was the worst. Not anger, not reproaches, but forgiveness. She slowly lowered the letter into her lap and ran her fingers over the name carved into the stone. Her lips trembled. "Forgive me, Leo." Her voice broke. "Please forgive me." But there was no answer. Only the quiet rustling of leaves and her own sons, drowning out the world around her. She spent several hours in the cemetery. Time ceased to exist. She read the letter over and over again, as if she was afraid it would disappear. It seemed that Leo was still nearby, that his words were his last attempt to keep her from finally falling. As the sun began to set on the horizon, she slowly stood up. Her legs were shaking, but something new appeared in her soul. Not relief, not peace, but a tiny spark, the realization that she had to change her life. For his sake, for your own sake. Rachel ran her fingers over the cold stone one last time, then pocketed the letter. She knew this moment would stay with her forever, and she knew that from now on she had to live differently. Rachel walked slowly along the cemetery path, feeling like every step was difficult for her. Her heart was heavy, but this time not from pain, but from awareness. She couldn't change the past, but she could try to change the future, and that was the only thing left. She was silent the entire way home, keeping Leo's letter in her pocket as a reminder. When she entered her parents' house, her mother looked up at her with a worried look. "Have you been to him?" she asked quietly. Rachel nodded and hugged her mother for the first time in a long time. The woman shuddered, but hugged her daughter tightly to her. "I want to change something, Mom," Rachel whispered. "I can't live like this anymore." The next day she went outside, feeling the sun warming her skin for the first time in a long time. She went to the hospital where she had once been treated and offered her help to the patient support program. She didn't know if she would succeed, but for the first time she felt like she was doing something right. Weeks passed, then months. The pain didn't go away, but she learned to live with it. She didn't drink anymore. She helped those who needed support. She enrolled in a psychology course, deciding that if she couldn't change her past, she might be able to help others avoid making the same mistakes. One evening, before going to bed, she took out a blank sheet of paper. She inhaled, held her breath, and began to write. Leo, I don't know if you can hear me where you are, but I want to tell you something that I didn't have time to do. Thank you for your love, for your forgiveness, for everything you taught me. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive myself, but I'll try. I don't want to waste the life you didn't have. I will live, and let this be my redemption. She folded the letter and hid it in a drawer. It wasn't for him. It was for her. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.